These days, cinemas are about more than just movies. They're about experiences. It's winning that Friday night bowling tournament. It's finally beating your brother in laser tag. It's date night with cocktails and a love seat upgrade. Whatever experiences you offer, you need a POS system that can keep up. With over 30 years of development, TAPOS offers a massive feature set, including omni-channel food and ticket sales, embedded CRM, loyalty and membership, custom cloud-based reporting, and third-party integrations with FECs. Learn more at taposapp.com.
We are constantly looking at different ways to monetize the consumer who is coming in and elevate their experience to be one that is memorable in every way, shape, or form.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Danny Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition, here with another daily episode of our CinemaCon 2025 edition brought to you by TAPOS. And in today's episode, I've got my colleague from the Box Office Pro publication and the Box Office Podcast, Chad Kennerk, joining us. Now, you're expecting to hear Rebecca Pauley announced up next from Box Office Pro. She was in our preview episodes. She got COVID. So she's not here this week. Filling in our favorite designated hitter, Alex DelVecchio from Rutgers Cinema, making your grand return to the Box Office Podcast. Great to have an exhibitor.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. You know, I don't think my LinkedIn page ever did better than in the week after the Box Office Pod last year.
I'm glad it worked out.
Very happy to come back on, and you know, sad Rebecca can't be here.
Always sad, always sad. But with the baseball stuff, is it Yankees, Mets, or Phillies?
I don't know who the Yankees or Phillies are, but this is a Mets town. You know?
That's how we got a good Rebecca Pauley replacement. We need a Mets voice in the crowd. Let's launch into what we have on the schedule in today's episode. We're going to be going over the panels and some of the top stories that happened today at CinemaCon 2025. And then in our feature segment, we will be speaking with Rob Novak, SVP of Food and Beverage over at Marcus Theaters, and the president of the National Association of Concessionaires that is rebranding to the EF&B. That's the Entertainment, Food and Beverage Association. That's coming up in the second half of the episode. Let's launch this episode, though, with a quick recap of everything that's happening on Tuesday, April 1st here at CinemaCon in Las Vegas. Schedule starts bright and early at 9 a.m. with the State of the Industry address by Michael O'Leary from Cinema United. Then we go into the Lionsgate presentation. Trade show opens at 11 a.m. Nice event. I love the trade show here at CinemaCon. Then at 2:30 p.m., we've got the return of Matthew Bologna, founding partner over at Puck News and the host of the Town podcast. He will be speaking with a number of executives, an industry think tank roundtable session at 2:30 p.m. here. We'll bring you those highlights tomorrow. Another thing we'll be doing in tomorrow's episode is bringing you the highlights of the 4:30 p.m. presentation today from Warner Brothers at the Coliseum. That's the schedule in a nutshell. Let's get into everything that happened. Chad, very, very busy panel morning for both of us, starting with the International Day Breakfast. Some really interesting comments here from our colleague at Sony Pictures Releasing International, Stephen Basil-Jones, the EVP and head of international marketing there. Opening the day's address at the International Breakfast, I think addressing some topics that have been top of mind for exhibitors. I've highlighted some quotes from that conversation. Can you just bring some of those highlights from that breakfast address?
Yeah, I felt like he had some great things to say. One of the quotes that jumped out at me, the big films are getting bigger and the mid-tier films especially are getting a little smaller. There's no ceiling and there's no floor.
And of course, talking about marketing, he also addressed some of the marketing challenges that we're seeing in the industry. A great quote that he brought in that address is saying, quote, "More marketing is needed to increase film awareness right now. But I would go further than that and just say it's not so much about increasing marketing spend, but more about better integrated campaigns, targeted messaging, and assets to capture and develop today's audience." I think that was a really good way of starting this entire event with a breakfast address from someone on the marketing side on the international division of a major studio, not only putting some of the challenges that are out there, but also the opportunities. And that was really the core of the executive roundtable that we had on Monday morning, moderated by Cinema United President and CEO Michael O'Leary. This is going to be available in full in the Friday episode of our podcast, so we won't be going too much into detail there. But the big talking points from this industry roundtable, I think, were very honest. Alejandro Ramirez Magaña, the CEO of Cinépolis, the Mexican-based circuit, one of the largest in the world, calling for a global 45-day exclusivity window. That wasn't really echoed by our colleagues in distribution that were there in that panel, but get ready for this to be a major theme at CinemaCon 2025. It comes up in the Sony presentation.
Right.
We'll get into that in a little bit. But that was, I think, the big headline from the panels this morning. There's a call from exhibition right now for uniformity, consistency with exclusivity windows. The second part of that conversation that was very interesting is the role of a pre-show and the role of the number of trailers that happened before the feature. Now, there were calls to have 4 to 5 trailers, this sort of sweet spot for behind the feature, basically, just introducing, getting people there. But trailer length remains an issue. Now, in Europe, there are shorter trailers. I didn't know this. Trailers in Europe are about 60 to 90 seconds long. But Jeff Goldstein from Warner Brothers pitching to the audience, hey, what if we team up for 5-minute long trailers? I think that'd be very compelling. Now, Alex, you run a university cinema over at Rutgers University. You know the value, the impact that trailers can bring. From the exhibitor's perspective, what do you think of either shorter trailers, 60 to 90 second long, or maybe having like an extended sequence, the way we see here at CinemaCon, maybe a 5, 6, 7 minute long trailer?
I mean, both of them could certainly work. It's certainly a case-by-case basis, right? Like,
Yeah.
I deal almost exclusively with 17 to about 24-year-olds who come to my movie theater, so 60 to 90-second trailers is great. I cannot tell you how well received every Lilo and Stitch teaser has been, that are all different. They're short, to the point. Everybody loves them. If you're going to do a 5-minute trailer, just, Superman,
Right.
a big movie.
It's got to be really
Fantastic Four.
captivating, really big.
If you do a 5-minute trailer for a questionable movie in front of a big budget one, maybe people tune out a little bit. Maybe they start looking at their phones a little bit. You lose them in the pre-show.
Yeah.
Not saying it's something that shouldn't be tried, but try it with the big boys. Because a 5-minute extended look at Superman, people would be interested in. A 5-minute extended look at a movie they haven't heard of with maybe a cast they're not familiar with, I don't know if they're going to pay attention that long, or you get the dreaded from the exhibition side that we all saw with the Frozen short, which is, hey, you're playing the wrong movie. You're playing the wrong movie.
For context to our listeners, when Coco came out theatrically back in 2017, Disney decided to attach, I think, a 20-minute long.
27.
27. You know exactly how long it was.
Yep.
A 27-minute long, quote-unquote, short ahead of Coco for Frozen 2, or it was like an in-between sequel.
Something with Orloff in the title, yeah.
And it was jarring. I remember going to see Coco. I was there on opening weekend at the AMC in Harlem in New York City, and people were confused. Not only that, but I was going to ask this to Alejandro, who was on the panel. In Mexico, it got such a bad reception, a bad reaction to have this extended short ahead of the feature, that I think eventually, if I remember correctly, Cinépolis asked Disney, hey, can we skip this part?
And they did. They did. I believe in the second week we took it off. And
that's what you guys did in your theater?
With their permission, we took it. Yeah, and it was by Disney instruction. But what was happening, a 27-minute movie with a beginning, middle, end, the kids have seen a movie, Right. And now let's get into Coco, and now it's the beginning act of it. And it was really hard to get people to reset. Much different circumstance, but you could see a situation where, especially if the 5-minute trailer isn't matching the genre of the film the people are watching, they could just, could tune out, could turn back on them. On occasions it works. Disney used to do that all the time. I remember watching the 101 Dalmatians thing before, maybe Hocus Pocus. I hate to throw it
That's how old you are, by the way.
Yeah, but I remember that they had like a 10-minute extended sequence before that. So it can work in certain circumstances, but from an exhibitor side, I would say just do it with the big boys. Like, just do it. Give me
Mission Impossible.
Yeah, give me Mission Impossible.
You have to show me a Tom Cruise stunt for those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know if it would be a good idea to do the first 5 to 7 minutes of a new movie that's coming out.
Yeah.
It can work both ways. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe a superhero movie that's not the main Avengers. Something like that might work.
Just if you were to do Mission Impossible and you put it in front of the amateur, now you're lining up genres.
Yeah.
That could be great. You get people hyped up for the next one, and now let's see this movie.
But here's the thing. Would it work the other way around? A movie like The Amateur in front of Mission Impossible. That's where I'm not sure, right?
Yeah.
It's something very tricky. It's a very exciting proposal. Now, part of this is something that Michael O'Leary mentioned was pitched to him by Eddie Duquesne, one of the CEOs of Kinepolis, the Belgian multinational, which is putting out a 60 to 75 minute long collection of trailers. Think of it like a mini CinemaCon available to theaters here in the US, where instead of paying admission, you pay a donation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how close this is to reality. It's intriguing. How effective do you think that would be? You're around young audiences. You're around students where you really have to get their undivided attention. Do you think folks would show up for 75 minutes of trailers?
Ironically, if you advertised and you kept it offline, that you're going to see Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the 5 minutes of it here, for a $3 donation on a Tuesday night, I do think that can work.
So you have to give them a little bit more than you have to say, like, hey, a special first look or sneak peek on the title.
Yeah, and you need to tell them what it's going to be.
Yeah, because they're not going to go in for like, oh, wow, Sony has something.
Correct, yeah. But if you were to tell people, hey, in this sizzle reel, you're definitely getting the first look at Wicked for Good, you're definitely getting Five Nights at Freddy's 2, you're definitely getting Fire and Ash, and you're definitely getting, TMNT before next October. That could definitely sell. But like anything else, you better tell people what they're going to get, so they know what they're coming for. Yeah. I wouldn't use the trailers themselves as the surprise in it. Mm-hmm. I would instead, especially if you're trying to make money for, Will Rogers or whatever it is,
right.
Say, hey, this is going to be your only look. This isn't going up online. And then I do think that could definitely work, especially on a Tuesday or Thursday night. Why not?
At least to establish it, because we all come here seeing things, we don't know exactly what we're going to see, right?
Oh, we were very surprised today at the Sony presentation.
Yeah.
We'll go into that in a bit.
Yeah, but, if they're able to establish that and make it something that people don't know what they're going to see, but they know they're going to see something really great.
Yeah, and then throwing in an unexpected surprise that's not announced. Very compelling ideas.
Yeah, like you give the 5 that will get people out.
Yeah.
And then, you put in 5 that may be lesser known, but you think, hey, we got the goods here,
Yeah, that need a marketing push.
Correct, yeah. I mean, what a great way. I don't know if Wuthering Heights is going to be something that debuts here or anything, but what a great way to do it, when they come for 5 nights, they come for this. It's like, oh, that Saltburn movie you all really liked 2 years ago? Here's the first look at that. And it wouldn't be enough to draw them out, but it would be enough for an added value in the seat during the experience that I think people would
interest. Like. I think there's a lot of innovative ideas happening here at day one. Some radical ideas. If you think, listening to this podcast, that a 75-minute trailer showcase is the most radical thing we're going to talk about today, get ready, because the Sony presentation gave us a lot to talk about. Before we get there, some major headlines here in the tech world. Let's start on the PLF side of things. Samsung Onyx announcing it's going to be releasing its LED cinema screen in 4 sizes and including a 10-year warranty. Very aggressive pushing this new cinema LED technology. We'll find out more about that at the trade show later on this week. You can find that story on our website, boxofficepro.com. In terms of big purchases, we saw View. You heard from View CEO Tim Richards in yesterday's episode. View recently signed a deal with Barco to expand its laser projection fleet significantly. More than 1,000 Barco Series 4 projectors going to all 8 View markets in the coming months. And on the PLF side with AMC, major announcement here, guys. AMC is going to be adding 40 additional Dolby Cinema auditoriums by the end of 2027. And that's not all. They're adding an extra element here, something that hasn't been available in AMC theaters in the US. AMC and CJ4D Plex announcing that they'll be opening 65 premium Screen X and 4DX locations worldwide together, including 25 total Screen X locations and 40 total 4DX auditoriums across the US and in Europe. This is AMC's, I say AMC because of course Odeon has had, I believe, some of this technology before, but when it comes to 4DX and Screen X, Massive, massive announcement. First time US AMC audiences get access to this, and crucially, that AMC A-List Pass that currently allows subscribers to experience premium formats. Unless there's a big change, these new premium experiences will be part of that repertoire. Massive announcements here on the tech side of the universe. And finally, when we talk about premium format, we also have to talk about IMAX. An agreement between Kinepolis and IMAX to add 9 additional locations across Europe and North America. PLF still top of mind for a lot of exhibitors. That's the news part of things. Now let's just go straight into the Sony presentation. A lot to talk about. Let's talk about Tom Rothman going up on stage and really being upfront about where Sony stands when it comes to theatrical exclusivity. They're all for it. Direct quote from Rothman at the Coliseum here at Caesars Palace saying, quote, "Cost and windows can work for us or against us. Theatrical needs to be smart about both, and Sony will work with you on both." Adam Bergerman, the president of Sony Pictures Releasing, expanded a little bit more on this, saying that right now, 1 in 3 North American consumers think they can get a theatrical movie at home in less than a month, and that SVOD window will follow shortly thereafter. He is saying here that it is critical for the overall box office growth that we change this audience perception. Now, I want to ask you here, Alex, how much of an issue is this with the younger university-age audiences that you have? How much is it that they're waiting for a streaming release? How does that impact your business?
I think for the bigger titles, it does not. Mm-hmm. For the medium and lower ranked, it's everything.
For a mid-range title, a romantic comedy,
everything, yep.
A genre play.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, obviously, Wicked was fine, but Wicked also did have an extended window.
Right.
But, you know, when there's a 50-50, like a jump ball, how's this movie going to do? If it has the sense of, oh, this might be something that's on my TV at home in 2 weeks, I've seen it murder movies. I mean, it really can, you know, and great on Sony, right? Because you talk about a mid-tier movie that killed it last year with It Ends With Us, you know? Yeah. Exclusive window. Maybe because Sony marketed it right, nobody ever thought that was going to streaming in 2 weeks, you know? For
earlier in the year, Anyone But You also had a great exclusive run.
Oh, great run, yeah.
Wasn't a huge opening weekend, didn't matter. Yep, Sony kept it exclusive, and it found its audience eventually.
Yep. It's great trivia in my theater. I had that movie for 15 weekends. So it's one of
15 weekends.
One of the longest runs, yeah.
That's fantastic to hear about.
It was just always steady. It was always a steady 50 people on a Friday night. It was always great.
We need them. We need those because it's not just about filling your screen with sellouts on opening weekend. Yep. If you can keep a movie on a consistent performing basis for 15 weekends, that solves a lot of your problems.
Oh, yeah. And if you think about a bigger chain that might have 12 theaters, okay, well, your 9th house has an Anyone But You in it in weekend 8, and it's still doing well. That also feeds the health of that building, too. It's not just an independent theater thing. That helps everybody. And then if you extrapolate that across every studio, you know, now all of a sudden movies aren't being discovered at home anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I know I did just say Saltburn was discovered at home. It went too quick.
Yeah,
you know? And,
unfortunately.
You know, it broke out 21 days after its release date at home on people's smart TVs, you know? It would be great if that happened with us, the way Greatest Showman happened with us, the way Anyone But You happened with us, you know? Longlegs happened with... That movie played forever. You know, that movie played all summer. So certainly, you know, I think the movies that aren't the big tentpoles, it's so much more important that they get the exclusivity. But ironically, because they aren't the big tentpoles, they're the ones that aren't getting it.
That don't get it.
Yeah, which is very ironic.
Well, let's talk about some of these titles on the Sony slate. Let's start in chronological order because there were a lot of announcements. We'll talk about the highlights here. We're not going to mention everything. But coming up next from Sony on May 30th is Karate Kid Legends. We had Ralph Macchio on stage with Ben Wang, the known stars of the 2 generations of karate children, I guess you could call it. We saw some footage. I found it interesting. Do you guys think there was enough there to convince the exhibitors attending that this is going to be a breakout hit at the end of May? Chad, what do you think?
I think so. I had an exhibitor sitting next to me that got very excited actually about the footage. I think for myself, I haven't really kept up with the franchise, but having seen that second trailer, I'm a lot more interested than I was before that. Yeah.
Alex, this is going to work in your theater.
It will. First of all, how great to see Ralph Macchio on the big screen with this
I know.
character.
I got a little emotional when I saw him in person.
He put a little flair on that word. He said, he's like, I'm back in theaters now.
Yeah.
And, one concern that I had about this movie is, I don't want to show Cobra Kai the movie. I have no interest in it,
Exactly.
And the trailer never felt like that. It doesn't reference anything in the show. This feels like a movie, a cinematic event. You have Jackie Chan in it. You have a new character, a new story with Daniel LaRusso. So I do think it'll play. Bloodbath of a weekend, May 30th is going to be real tough.
Yeah.
But I think there's room for it. I do. And I think it has a chance, especially in the first 2 weekends of June before How to Train Your Dragon comes. I do think it could do great with families there.
There's a lot of traffic starting on Memorial Day weekend. And it's good that we have this problem, right?
Because
it's better than the opposite.
And it's not a problem. There's room for everybody.
Right.
Right. But it is great to have it. But certainly when you see that movie and there's questions around it, oh man, May 30th, at least it's on its own.
Yeah.
But May 23rd is a beast now.
I know.
And then June 13th is coming just the same. So it's going to be, I think it will do well. But again, it never felt like I'm watching a season 8 of a Netflix show. Which
that
is what I was worried about.
That was the big risk.
That was the risk. When you hear a Karate Kid Legends movie with him coming back, but I never thought it felt like that. This feels like a movie, an event, Jackie Chan. And he looks great in it, doesn't he?
And Jackie Chan hasn't aged.
He's still got that humor, too.
Great shape, too.
Great. Yep.
Well, let's talk about another big title here coming from Sony at the end of June. 28 years later, director Danny Boyle coming up on stage in person here at CinemaCon. And we got to see the world premiere of the next trailer. And man, it looks amazing. But I hope it's not a spoiler. Why are all the zombies naked?
Yeah, a lot of naked going on.
A lot of naked zombies. I did not expect...
Once you're infected, you probably don't care.
You don't care.
You don't care.
There's more skin and bone that I expected to see in this. But fine, that's what we're going with.
Boots on the ground. I've talked to a lot of guests about this movie because I'm so curious about it. It exists in two different ways. When I say 28 years later... Sometimes it's like, oh, okay. When I say 28 years later and Cillian Murphy's back, people get excited. This is his follow-up to $1 Billion Oppenheimer off his Best Actor win in the movie that he broke out in. I was just a little upset he wasn't in this trailer. This is now 0 for 2, This is his baby. And him being back is why I want to see it. Yeah. This is why, to me, it feels like 28 Days Later prime, Like, this isn't weeks, this isn't any... This is the one. Cillian Murphy's back in this role, in this movie. Let's go.
Do we know that for sure? Because they mentioned Cillian's name. They mentioned his name, right? Yeah.
No, when the press release went out, it's Cillian Murphy's back in a new 28.
Oh, so it's there.
No, it is.
All right.
And Danny Boyle said you're going to have to wait a bit to see
him.
So I think maybe he doesn't come into the film.
Yeah, whatever take it is, I'm not sure. But when I heard this movie existed, I was hopeful for Cillian Murphy, name above the poster, 28 years later, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's not the marketing we're getting. Doesn't mean it won't work, but I do hope that, there's a version of 28 years later that's a real breakout, but I think you need him. It's his movie. You don't think?
I need Danny Boyle. For me, it's Danny Boyle.
Sure.
And then I realized, well, no, I don't really need Danny Boyle because we got to see a little bit, not too much, but we got to see a still from the follow-up, which is 28 years later, The Bone Temple, which is scheduled for January 2026. All we saw was a still with Ralph Fiennes in there that it looks like an extra from Apocalypse Now. And that's when I realized, you know what? I think the IP has something here. My question is it generational? Is it for people our age that are in their later 30s, early 40s?
I think
it's
always been a cinephile franchise, right?
Yeah.
Even back to its core. Like, this is one that, like, the cinephiles like, yes, for sure. Certainly breakout potential. People go back and see how good that first movie is, and it's like, oh man, let's go see this one. I think it could break out, but a little more niche than maybe like a big summer blockbuster might give you, But it fills a great role. It fills a great role in that slate because How to Train Your Dragon and Elio don't compete with 28 years later. Right? It's going to have its own runway. So it's going to have the
And then
time.
on the other half of the release schedule, you've got obviously, Superman and Jurassic World Rebirth. So it has a little niche there to get that R-rated adult audience.
In the exact way Longlegs did last July, right?
It's a great way.
Where Longlegs just sort of quietly made $75-80 million, while all the big guys still ate, and it was no hurt to anybody.
No problem at all.
Yep.
Later up in the summer, July 18th, we got a first look at I Know What You Did Last Summer. Very, I don't want to go into too many spoilers. It reminded me, it was an homage to Scream, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we saw was a
Yeah.
very upfront, direct homage to the original Scream.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that. If
did
this movie maybe does the fan service and does callbacks to that entire genre of teen horror, MTV horror from the late 90s, I might be more in the bag than I let on about this movie. Chad, what did you feel?
I agree about definitely kind of a Scream callback. I think Sony's very much putting this into a position in the way that Paramount did with Scream.
Yeah.
In terms of, it is a direct sequel, but it also kind of feels like a reboot.
Yeah, it's a self-aware
Yeah.
reboot-quel or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah. But to see Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt, she gives a very iconic line in there.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I'm in
It
for
hits the right notes for, I'm not sure if it's the right demographic, but it's a demographic. Do younger audiences care, Alex? How much lifting does Sony have to do to market this to 18 to 23-year-olds?
Oh, they got a lift. They have a lift in front of them. Not impossible to do it because the movie's so readily available online. Yeah. But to me, this is a millennial movie. This was my movie when I was in high school, and now I want to go see these characters again. But we just saw this work in Scream, right? When they just rebooted Scream the exact same way, it did work.
Yeah.
I think of the, again, boots on the ground a little bit. There's a lot of excitement amongst the age group for the new Final Destination movie.
Okay, yeah, because that has like a viral second life or third life at this point.
So that one, I've seen that for sure, which has been encouraging. In terms of I know what you did last time. Again, the trailer just dropped.
Right, we have to be fair with these guys, but there is a lift ahead of them.
Yeah, there is. And the lift hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
So they might nail it. Mm-hmm. But certainly, to me, this is a millennial franchise more than this is for the young folks. Because if you want to get the young folks, they see these movies a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. It's a big genre for that demographic. Changing genres up slightly, Darren Aronofsky coming on stage for the first time ever in an exhibition convention, which is nice. He kind of joked about it, saying that this is his first sincere attempt at something that is, simply put, a lot of fun. A word that we don't usually associate with Aronofsky films.
Right.
But guys, I was sold. I was sold on Caught Stealing, coming out on August 29th. I am more in the bag for this than I thought I was. I'm really surprised by how positively I reacted to this footage. Austin Butler in this movie. It looks like a heist caper, and it looks like a movie made for adults, which is great. It doesn't infantilize anything. Adapted from a book that come out, set in the late 90s in New York City. Living in New York City, I love seeing that era of the city captured on screen.
I think he called it peak humanity.
Peak humanity. I think that's a good way to put it. Well, how did you feel about this?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week, that this was already one before I'd seen any footage that I was interested in.
Yeah.
I wanted to see, so this totally sold me. Yeah.
How about you, Alex?
Oh, I thought I was into it. As someone who loves movies like anyone else, sometimes it breaks your heart when Aronofsky movies come out and he makes a great movie and it just doesn't quite land, because it's hard to appeal. But when he came out and he said, I'm doing something different with this one, I want people to have fun with it, I was hyped up. I was like, this could be great. Austin Butler, so great cast, up and down, looks like a lot of fun. Coming out, I believe that's Labor Day weekend, right? So August 29th.
Yeah,
so I love movies.
It probably sets in that.
So, we just saw Equalizer 3 kill it in that weekend. You saw Shang-Chi do it a couple years before.
Didn't Bullet Train come out in that corridor, or was that earlier?
I think that one was August 15th, the teens of August.
So it's a little bit earlier,
Yeah, so it was great, and I'm excited because if there's one thing he can deliver when he's trying, it's a great movie, that I'm not worried that on the Tuesday before release it gets a 40 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's probably going to be like a mid-90s fun romp, and then once you get Butler and Zoe out on that press tour, they're going to have to put the work in that week, and they will.
They'll work it. I have faith in them.
And you get them to the junkets and all the interviews, and I think there's potential there, for August 29. That's normally a dead zone. It'd be great to get a big movie there.
It'd be great to see that. Another first-time unexpected filmmaker coming up on the CinemaCon stage was Kogo Nada, who I don't associate with big studio movies, but it's great to see him come up with something like a big, bold, beautiful journey coming out on September 19th. Wow, we didn't know what to expect from this movie. Chad went to the bathroom when this played.
One of the titles on Sony's slate that I was most excited to
Awful
see
timing.
missed it.
Awful timing, man. I'm so sorry. But because you know what you missed? You missed probably the most compelling footage that we saw at the presentation. This is a swing. This is the type of movie that you want to see in a theater, but this is also a sci-fi, whimsical, romantic journey that does not scream, and doesn't have to scream, massive blockbuster. It's a Kogonada movie. But whether it's a huge hit or not, I'm glad that studios are supporting filmmakers like this, and that a movie like this not only gets made, but gets to go out in theaters. Alex, how interested are you in a movie like this?
Oh, I'm so interested. And I'll tell you, 30,000 foot view, when you hear the concept of the movie, you go, I'm not sure. In 2.5 minutes, and I mean, Daniel alluded to it, they set up the concept of it in a minute. They showed you how it worked in the second minute, and then they showed you the emotional payoffs of it in the last 30. I can't wait to play it in front of movies.
That's good marketing, That's good marketing.
It's a great trailer that you just play in front. People will feel a little bit before the actual movie starts. I mean, it's really a great put-together trailer with Margot fresh off of Barbie, Colin Farrell, who, I'll follow that guy anywhere, but he's off the Penguin, which everyone loves the Penguin, so he's really peaking right now. Again, a great one for the date it's on. If you could just get a sleeper hit there, how great would that be? And it's got potential.
Does it need to perform, is the second question I have. Because it's not a cookie-cutter movie. And I don't want to sell the impression that everything here has to be a breakout hit.
No.
I would like for it to be, but I also realize that it's a movie by an auteur director with a title that has no IP association, which isn't that it doesn't mean that the industry's allergic to something like that. These aren't negatives.
Yeah.
I'm just saying from a marketing perspective, it's a bigger lift than most. So I don't want to place blockbuster potential expectations on something like this.
No, but filling a role in mid-September of having
exactly.
Why couldn't it open to the mid-teens? Sure it could.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Not
impossible at all. You've got Margot Robbie, who
But that's how we need to define success for this, because I think sometimes we get lost. Maybe not us that we're living and breathing this, but when we talk to I think a wider B2C, not B2B audience, but B2C audience that follows the box office, you say a mid-teens debut,
which to me for this movie feels that's what I mean when I say breakout.
Well,
and I know
for an exhibitor,
correct,
that's highly important. That's what I really want to resonate with the listeners.
Yeah,
when we talk about a breakout, we're not talking about movies that have to win your fantasy league on who wins the box office.
Right,
it has to be what works for exhibitors in a moment in the schedule when you need to program something. And it's great that you guys have this as an option to put this on your screens.
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And you're right. When I say breakout, that's what I mean.
Exactly,
Long Leg. Everyone here at this convention loves Long Legs. Not because it made $400 million, because it made 70 in a different way, while the other guys did well, right? This movie could absolutely, I think, debut, like I said, why couldn't it open to the mid-teens,
I think it's going to be a word-of-mouth title. I think it's going to be very driven on reviews and word of mouth. I'm rooting for it. I like bold swings like this. It's an original story, fully realized, I think, by a visionary filmmaker. I'm looking forward to it. On the IP side, of course, Sony does have something, because so far we are well into this podcast, and every single title that we've mentioned here is probably adult-leaning, I'd say, to be fair, like late 20s to 30s and up. You finally have a 4-quadrant title with Anaconda coming out on Christmas Day this year. Paul Rudd and Jack Black sending a video message because the film is currently in production in Australia. I think this is what it is, which is fine. It's a send-up of a title from the late 90s with a funny cast. I think it's going to serve a purpose in the marketplace. No complaints here. We just have to see a little bit more. We didn't see enough of it here.
Just a movie that needs a good trailer.
Yeah, it really is. That's what we were waiting for. We didn't see that.
If it has a great trailer and because, like you said, we know the concept of it is something a little offbeat. Mm-hmm. It's something they think is going to work. Would be great to see it.
I mean, we saw with Jumanji how they rebooted that as a comedy, and that worked. And I think this could possibly have a path similar to that.
Exactly. I think that's very much the path of this film, if it works. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we get closer to the fourth quarter. We did get an update on the Spider-Man front. If you listened to our preview episode last week, you remember that we really went hard on Sony saying we need to get an update on these movies. And we did get an update. We got a title for the next live action Spider-Man movie coming out in July 31st, 2026, now titled Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we also got a release date for Beyond the Spider-Verse that is scheduled for June 4th, 2027. Not much beyond those announcements, but we didn't need anything other than this. We needed an update.
Yeah.
And we got the update we needed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This from the exhibitor side, when you talk about Spider-Man coming out July 31st, it's just music to your ears because August isn't going to be dead, is it?
That's a great point.
You're talking about a movie that could potentially gross, $1 billion in August, which is great. The
dating here has been, I think, very on point for Sony. Really good way to program some of these titles. We got some mentions of movies that are in the works that have been announced. Of course, we got the update last week that there is a Legend of Zelda movie scheduled for March 26, 2027. We didn't see anything beyond title art for that. There was a mention that Neil Blomkamp is doing a new adaptation of Starship Troopers.
Right, yeah.
Which is interesting. I know he was at one point working on an Alien movie. That went by the wayside. So now that he's tackling Starship Troopers, I'm interested to find out more. We didn't get to see anything. We just heard about that. But the big sort of announcement here that happened to close out this presentation, we need to focus on this part because, guys, Tom Rothman from Sony mentioned that this is a radical cinematic event. He introduced this as the most exciting project he's been a part of since Avatar. And there are a lot of parallels to Avatar here. We learned a lot about the Beatles from Sam Mendes. This is a 4-part cinematic journey, meaning there are 4 titles, 4 movies, 4 separate movies, one on each band member. And here's the flip side. Each of those 4 titles are going to be coming out in the same month. All 4 Beatles movies from Sam Mendes are scheduled for April 2028. Tom Rothman calling it the first bingeable theatrical experience. He said that Sony is aiming to dominate the culture that month in April 2028. I have to be upfront. I've been covering this industry for over a decade now. I think this is one of the biggest announcements I've ever witnessed at CinemaCon. This is also the most radical programming move I have ever seen from a studio. 4 major titles on an IP like the Beatles, released not in the same year, in the same month. Now, we don't know if that's one a week. We don't know if it's all of them released on the same day. We just know there's 4 Beatles movies coming out in April 2028. I don't know what to make of this, because this might be the most genius release strategy ever, or the worst and dumbest release strategy ever. And we're not going to find out probably until week 6 to 8, because it's not meant to be an opening weekend phenomenon. It's meant to be just a blitz of 4 highly in-demand movies. And then maybe after 10 weeks, we figure out how it's going to work out. I have to ask Alex, there are 4 movies.
Yeah.
You have 3 screens.
I have 3 screens, yes.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, sorry, George. I don't know.
You have to write the Ringo movie.
I know,
needs a slow end here.
I know. Do you 2-screen the McCartney movie? I don't know. Like you said, hard to even wrap your head around it until you see it. We've never seen it before. So, yeah, what does that, is it April 3rd, 10, 17, 24, and it's a different movie each time? Do you save Paul for the end? You open them at the start? There's so many.
Does it bleed into May?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really just dominating the culture. It's dominating the release calendar from maybe 2 months.
Yep.
And there's a theatrical window here, because we just heard from Sony that they're committed to making films exclusive for theatrical. So this isn't I'll watch it at home a month from now. I don't know what we're looking at here other than just an insane idea.
The fun part of it, like the very fun part of it, is clearly Sam Mendes is playing with form a little bit, where he's going to weave the release strategy into how he tells this story. That's exciting. It'll definitely be an interesting watch. In terms of, like you said, the booking of it, the release strategy of it, the marketing, all that, is it just called The Beatles? Or does each one has to have a
good
different
luck.
title, right?
Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, so all of that has to be worked out. They've got 3 years. So, that I'm sure they're thinking of it now. But certainly, I mean, such a huge idea. And, I jokingly said, like Horizon announced 4 movies, but that was original IP. 2 weren't shot yet. This is like, no, these 4 are happening, and they're getting filmed, and they're coming out. And they're going to have a big marketing spend behind them. It's going to be so interesting to see in April of 2028. I think we'll know by February 2028.
Like, how this plays out.
I think 2 months out, we're going to know, this is going to work. Or you're going to know, Yeah, I think you'll know 2 months out.
It's exciting.
It is.
Listen,
It really is.
Horizon was an ambition.
Yeah.
The Beatles is a risk.
Oh, yeah.
It's this is the type of decision, this release strategy makes or breaks legacies. Mm-hmm. That's how big it is.
Yep.
And if you have as close to a guarantee as possible at the box office, like a Beatles movie, is blitzing, is inundating, flooding the marketplace with all 4 of them at once, the best way to release this for everyone involved. We don't know the answer to that. Mm-hmm. And I am very curious to find out. We can't forget the cast announcements here. Chad, can you fill us in on the 4 actors that came on stage, announced, basically revealed to the world as the new Beatles?
Yeah, they had the 4 pictures up there, and I'm like, who's going to play these men? And the cast is, John is being played by Harris Dickinson, George, Joseph Quinn, Paul Mescal, and Ringo, Barry Keoghan.
That's a good cast.
It's a stacked cast.
Solid cast.
And each one of those actors could lead their own film.
Yes. So I put all of them at the same month. I'm sorry. I don't know if I like this or if I hate it. That's why I love the idea.
As a moviegoer, I think it could be interesting because Sam Mendes talked about how all the films are going to correlate with one another. There's going to be some overlap, but from a different perspective.
I don't mind them correlating. I mind them cannibalizing each other in the marketplace. Yeah, as a cinephile, I'm in. As an analyst on the motion picture exhibition industry, I don't know if I need to be convinced or inspired that this crazy idea is going to work, but I love that it's out there.
I love it. And at its heart, Sony's trying to get people into movie theaters 4 times in a month now. They're giving it a shot. If anything, if anything can do it, it's the Beatles biopic. You won't find a more dedicated fan base.
Here's my pushback.
Yeah.
Do you think moviegoers are going to spend? It's 4 movies. This is over $100.
Oh, and I would also
to watch all 4 for moviegoers.
And I would also say the biggest thing that I would be worried about, like I'm worried about it now when I think about it, is going to be confusion.
Yeah.
There's a Beatles movie coming out. When is it? April 3rd. Cool. I'll go see it.
I already saw it.
Once you go past that of there's 4 Beatles movies coming out, and they're going to intersect with each other, and this one is called it, and this is there. Now you're putting up some barriers to what could be a surefire. Like you said, like if the movie was just called Sgt. Pepper and it ended on a concert, that movie's making $1 billion.
There's no question about
that movie's making $1 billion.
This is the riskiest way to make a Beatles movie, other than maybe, because Sony has done this before, in making Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man. We had multiple of those. If you really want to get radical, this Beatles movie, even though we have an announcement, won't have the Beatles in there. That's the only way this gets any crazier, is if we get like a Spider-Verse universe with no Beatles in Beatles movies. But other than that, it's insane. It's bonkers. I love that it's out there. Will it work? Man, I don't know. I hope so.
I don't even know what it's going to look like. What's the marketing going to look like for that? Will there be 4 different all that is big questions,
How's the SEO going to work, Alex? People find more about movies on the internet, man.
And I have seen, and not to go super off a tangent, the Marvels failed because people didn't want to watch Captain Marvel, the TV show. Like, I saw that in my lobby. They said, I didn't catch up on the show, I can't see the movie.
Birds of Prey got retitled because of SEO.
Yes.
This is an actual thing that we have to think about.
Yeah, and I the way I put it, you never want to put roadblocks in front of a movie.
Yeah.
And you, like I said, if you just call it The Beatles and you release it on Christmas Day, you know what that box office looks like.
Guaranteed.
I can see the movie in my head now. Like
it's
I know
what it looks
like. Exactly. Yeah. But part of me is like, I'll follow Sam Mendes anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So this is an exciting way to do it, and I would hate to like, I would hate to only look at it from the business perspective. I know this is the business podcast.
We have to do it. Listen, artistically, we're in. Artistically, we're in.
I'm so in. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Like, to watch this movie and the way it's going to intersect, and like I said, him playing with the form of it is its own form of excitement. It's like the MCU for Beatles fans. You know?
Right.
You know, so from that perspective, I'm excited to see how. I don't even know how it's going to look. I don't know. But like I said, they've got 3 years to figure out. The challenge will be marketing it and explaining it before people see that first movie. They got to know ahead of time on a mass scale. That's their challenge.
I think the smart thing to do would be to have each film stand alone. They do intersect. You can see them in any order. You could see 1 and not see all 4. You could see 3 and not see all 4. You know, so that moviegoers can go in and not have that Marvel expectation.
What I was excited for when it said 4 films, I really thought we were going to see Christmas 27, Christmas 28, Christmas 29.
That makes perfect sense.
I was like,
let's walk away happy.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
But then they just put 1 month and 4 titles.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, and even if you just meet me halfway here. What if it was 1 a month? That would still be a radical experiment. Mm-hmm. That would still be exciting. But that doesn't leave Sony with the mandate, because that's what this is. Yeah. With the mandate that these movies have to work. We're in a position. By Sony doing this, we're in a position that the entire global theatrical industry is taking 1 to 2 months on 1 studio and 1 IP. This is a massive swing, and it can go either way at this point.
It can, and you know, I've rarely seen this work. Even if you
how does this not scare you?
Even if you look at, and I mean, when I was coming up, and one of my first weekends working at a movie theater, it was Matrix Revolutions. It was too close, you know. And that was 5 months out. What if one of these movies disappoints? What if I don't know how this could happen. What if 3 of them are great, one's bad?
The Grindhouse double feature from the 2000s. We've seen plans get shifted mid-release with these things.
When the medium itself is played with on a release schedule, you rarely see it work.
We went from a guarantee to a play where if this doesn't work, we're in huge trouble. And if it does work, it's success that has maybe never been seen in this industry. Yeah. It's the riskiest way of doing this, and I applaud that. Because there was a very vanilla way of doing this. That's not what Sony's doing.
Not do that.
That's not what Sam Mendes was doing.
Like I said, there's a way to just do Yellow Submarine.
Yeah.
You know,
no one's gonna blink twice.
No, and then you know it opens to 80, it legs out to 350, and away you go. You know, this is not that. This is, in a way, it's way more exciting. But in a way, it's way riskier. Way riskier. Yeah.
Oh, no one's touching April. 2028, no one else is touching April 2028. No one's touching May 2028.
I would actually say they are going to touch it. You know, because
you think someone's going to step up?
There's going to be. I promise you, there's going to be a big animated movie in 2028. Once Mario and Zelda back up April back to back with billion-dollar movies, they're not leaving 2028 for an adult musical biopic.
So Beatles is going to have to contend with that, and that's not a bad thing because we don't want to depend. And that's where my concern is. We don't want to depend on this. And having to work.
Yeah, and I think it was good that you didn't hear the words IMAX or Dolby or anything incorporated because you're not getting that for a month. You know, you're not. You're just not. Yeah. I hate to be as rudimentary as not if the Kung Fu Panda 5 comes out. You know, you're not going to get the Beatles will take a back seat. And I know, no way, yes way. I promise you. You know? Yeah. So it will have competition. Like I said, it's such a big idea. You almost don't even know how to analyze it besides saying, that's exciting, but it does introduce risk into something that, like, why introduce risk? You know, that's kind of what... so many ways to look at it, you know?
Yeah.
But I just love Sam Mendes so much, so it's like, it's going to work. I'm going to love it, you know? But will my mom want to watch that version of a Beatles movie 4 times in a month?
4 times in a month. And will the average moviegoer want to spend over $100 at the movies within a 4 to 5 week cycle? I want them to. I think there's great value in that. Yep. But let's face it, Tom Rothman himself said there is a conversation here with cost and windows that we have to work together as an industry. And then he follows that up with, we're giving you 4 movies in a month. Same IP, same blockbuster potential. His words are going to get put to the test 3 years from now.
Yeah. I doubt anything that happens this week, no matter how good it looks, will match the interest level of this concept.
These are bold decisions by Sony. Across the entire slate, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Bold decisions. You have your established IPs. You have, your Spider-Mans. You have your Anaconda, your Cross Quadra. You have that. Then you've got your original titles from Aronofsky, from Kogonada. And then you've got this bat poop crazy idea that we're all in love with, that we've been talking about for a long time because we're excited by it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little scary. Yeah. And you know what? A Beatles movie was never scary from a business perspective.
Nope.
But it is now, in a good way, if you get what I'm saying.
I know, yep. Where, the Beatles movie's coming out in April. Oh, perfect. Nope, not quite. There's some stuff to think about here. But in a great way. The further away I've gotten from it, kind of the more jazzed up I am getting. Because it's like, oh, that is kind of cool. That's kind of badass. That's a cool way to do it, and it'll be a great season 2 of the studio. Well,
At the very least. Well, that wraps up our conversation here on day 1 of CinemaCon. Coming up after this commercial break is my interview with Rob Novak, SVP of Food and Beverage over at Marcus Theaters, and the president of the Concessionaires Association. That's coming up after the break.
At CinemaCon 2025, Barco invites you to find the ideal match for your cinema. Barco's purpose-built theater and cinema-focused experience in Las Vegas features cutting-edge solutions and exciting laser-powered demos. Barco's cinema experts are on hand to help you discover technology that elevates every frame. If you're at the show, don't miss them in Roman 3 and 4 and at their exclusive happy hour at the Vista Bar on April 2nd. And for everyone else, you can learn more about Barco's innovative solutions at barco.com/cinema.
And we are back here on the Box Office Podcast, CinemaCon edition in 2025 with Rob Novak, the Senior Vice President of Food and Beverage at Marcus Theaters and the President of the National Association of Concessionaires, currently going through a rebranding and will be known as Entertainment Food and Beverage Association. Rob, welcome back to the podcast. A lot to talk about in the world of concessions. How's everything going in this turbulent Q1 for exhibition for you guys?
Well, Daniel, thanks for having me back on. It's great to be back with you. Things are well. We had an amazing Q4 for our business. We had an amazing Q4 in terms of sales and all that we do, in selling food and beverage and concessions to our consumers across all channels, both for the Marcus Theater Corporation and as an industry as a whole. And yes, Q1 has not necessarily delivered everything we hoped for with regard to keeping that trend as high as it was, but we have high expectations for where the balance of the year goes and what that's going to mean in the food and beverage world.
Now, we are talking about the biggest trends in the food and beverage side of the industry. Per caps have been up in the post-pandemic period. It's that and premium large format have been the two big exclamation points in this part of the recovery. Part of that has been driven by expanded menus and alcohol sales. What would you say is the current state of the F&B business? Are we still seeing that trend toward expanded menus, more restaurant-style food, and just this growth of alcohol sales that we've just seen explode over the last 8 years?
Yeah, we have a guest base that is entrenched in a specific way or expectation for out-of-home experience. And I think it's across all entertainment venues. We are a form of out-of-home entertainment, and we need to be competitive with those other forms. And so many of those trend-based forms, whether it's the Topgolf, the family entertainment centers, or any of those, have a full compilation of food and beverage, of alcohol offerings, of bars, of just different ways of serving their guests. So our guest expectation is higher. So the concentration of guests who we do have coming through the doors of our theaters throughout the country at this point, they expect that. It's become the norm. Mm-hmm. I think alcohol is a universally accepted thing in out-of-home entertainment. I think we've proven ourselves as an industry to municipalities that is not something that is necessarily abused or overdone for the most part. In our theaters, people come, they have a drink, maybe they have two, and that's their experience in their out-of-home, and they They leave in a safe manner. It's not necessarily something where people are sitting in a bar for 12 hours in our buildings and, consuming, but it is the norm and it's what our guests expect.
Now, we know that sales have been up on the F&B side, but I do have to ask about this one topic because we've seen the impact of what these tariffs, either as a threat or reality, have done to food prices in all sectors of the industry in this country. This is a concession stand issue. This is a cinema issue. What are you monitoring so far? Has there been a difference? Will there be an impact? What are you guys gauging at the association when it comes to some of these policies?
People have to understand, obviously, how tariffs work, and I don't think everybody does. Obviously, we as the end user or buyer is the one who would have to collect or pay said tariff on an item. I think the biggest impact off the top, right, so much of our stuff is domestically grown. We're just lucky in that respect, right? We're talking about popcorn seed. We're talking about soda. Those things are not imported items. Now, where you do see it or where it may impact, and I think an industry that's going to see a lot of it from a food and beverage is the alcohol industry. Mm-hmm. And as we look at it as a cinema industry, take, for example, the United States produces a lot of bourbon. Well, if that has to go across the border to, our neighbors in Canada and or Mexico, they're going to feel that impact. Similarly, back to us, tequila. Mm-hmm. Tequila is something that I was with a manufacturer just 2 weeks ago in San Diego and at a different show, and we were having dinner, and it's one of the largest tequila manufacturers in the world. And that was something that they were preparing for. And they actually told me an interesting thing. Their way to mitigate that, because they saw the writing on the wall, the manufacturer did, they brought in a large supply of product prior to any tariffs being introduced. So because of that product being already in the U.S. is not subject to tariff, right? Mm-hmm. Now, conversely, they could then pass it on for any tariff that they bring to mitigate their costs too and take advantage of it. But that's not what their goal was. Their goal was to prevent it because, like anything, in a competitive market like alcohol, you could see someone who's impacted, end user like us, who doesn't want to pass on the guest, then just have less focus on a spirit like tequila and focus on more domesticated stuff, whether that's domestic vodkas or bourbons or whatnot, to take advantage of the margins to not impact us too much. But that would be the biggest area of concern for us in a food and beverage operation would be alcohol, because that's where we probably have the most exposure to international products that are tariffed.
Yeah, and this is obviously a developing situation. It seems like it changes from week to week here, but we'll continue keeping an eye on that topic, as well as other developing topics on the tech side. It's 2025, meaning I have to ask you about AI. I almost feel embarrassed to bring this up to everyone I interview, but it's me not doing my job unless I do it. I think it's in my contract now. But AI has been integrated into a lot of areas in cinema operations. We see exhibitors like View International applying it in programming. What are some areas that you've seen it implemented or at least discussed when it comes to concessions?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. And thanks for asking it. I think where we're starting to see this in all food and beverage, and it's probably going to peak first in QSR and trail into us, is an AI-based POS type system, where go beyond the kiosk. And you already see it. And McDonald's was so far ahead of the curve with the drive-through. You're not even talking to a real person. And it's been going on for years and people just didn't realize it, right? And I knew they had bought a tech company years prior because they knew this was kind of a coming on the horizon as to how it responds. And I think that's something we're looking at. Initially, so many of us in food and beverage were looking at ways to increase the spend of the customer by using innovative upselling, upsizing, increasing of the basket type technology that was built into a normal workflow that a consumer would go through on an app or a web-based browser. Same thing if you order, anything online from different manufacturers. I think at this point, the next step is, how do we have AI inventive or intuitive kiosks, AI invented order places that take place in person, that possibly like an avatar pops up on that kiosk and walks you through the journey versus the standard journey where someone is walking up to a kiosk, typing something in, hunting and pecking what they want to find, trying to find their modifiers to say whether it's extra butter on their popcorn or add jalapenos to the nacho, or they ordered a burger and they don't want tomato. That becomes an arduous process for many guests because essentially all you're doing is you're operating a POS interface. Conversely, if you have an AI interface, that AI avatar might be taking the order, processing the order, fitting it into all of the components that you want in that, and then basically putting a screen up saying, hey, Daniel, can you review this order? Does this say everything that you want? You said yes, it thanks you. It makes you feel like you interacted with a human, less that you operated a POS. I think that is the next generation that we will see in food service. I think we're already starting to see it, but that is where it's going in our business and how it works in our realm.
Now, when we talk about just the process of ordering at the cinema has just been revolutionized so much over the last couple of years. I look at the impact of e-commerce and digital ticketing on cinema architecture, for example, where you used to have, and you know this well enough, you're an industry veteran, you used to have the long lines snaking around a big box office at every lobby. That's empty space now, where that space is being repurposed. I want to ask about how the concession stand space is changing. Is mobile ordering modifying the way you guys lay out buildings?
Yeah, years ago, we used to create a linear, in many cases, linear stand, different type of stand. That was essentially akin to like multiple workspaces that every workspace served the same purpose, right? First, you used to have soda machines there, but those got ripped out 20 years ago to become self-serve soda, right? So the cashier would take the order, essentially have access to popcorn, have access to soda, have access to nachos or pretzels, and just basically be able to turn around, walk 2 feet, and present it all to you. And that was repeated 8 times over. Today, a lot of times what we have is a counter, and we're trying to reimagine a merchandising space that allows for a shopping area for guests to buy the other items that we sell, the other items that we, push to consumers, which could include merchandise or whatnot. And then as the stand continues, there's a pickup area. There might be a kiosk on the counter because we know how consumer behavior leads itself. Sometimes if we put kiosks in open space, they get lost. Some guests still want to order in person, but we want them to try a kiosk and use some of the upselling features that we have that are built in, the intuitive nature of those kiosks to, elicit the sales that we want to get. So because of it, we have repurposed how the stand's designed. The issue for many of us is we went into the pandemic and we had renovated a bunch of buildings, and then we go into this low period of time and it costs capital to renovate a lot of those things. So only now are we starting to see changes in our buildings. I believe a lot of them, in many cases, I can't speak for every operator, were kind of self-modified, not perfected, not done to a level that we're doing them now, where we're actually spending dollars and changing out fixtures to represent the building of the future with pickup areas, mobile ordering signage and kind of Wayfair signage that says, hey, come here to get this, or this order is ready. That transition is now underway in many buildings, and I think will continue for the next 5 years.
As we talk about the actual cinema space, the physical space, I have to bring this up because I didn't notice it until the last year. I'm walking into cinema lobbies now, and I'm seeing merchandising booths, either right next to the concession stand, either in different parts of the lobby where the arcades used to be. Now I'm seeing collectibles for sale there. You have a panel at CinemaCon that the NAC/EF&B is producing on the Thursday morning at 8 a.m. called From Screen to Scene, Driving Ticket Sales and Boosting Profits with Collectible Concessions and Merchandise. That's going to be moderated by Dan Hurley of National Amusements. I wanted to ask about that, what that impact of the collectible merchandising revolution is having on the concessions adjacent business. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, I think it is. It's almost an integration of the experiential nature of how the business has become. Consumers see this as an event. If you're coming out to see Snow White or Minecraft, if you're coming out to see Thunderbolts or Mission Impossible, these tentpole type pictures that studios have built large marketing campaigns about, what we've done is we've extended what had gone on in the past. In the past, there were these parallel pathways, like Wicked, for example, tremendous merchandising movie, but also had this tremendous campaign within retail to sell merchandise around it. But I think everybody has made the awareness of, if people, the most fervent fans of these IPs, are the ones coming to see it at the theaters. So why not bring the merchandise to the guests that are the biggest fans? Why make the guests, now granted, guests are shopping for groceries or whatever they do at the Targets, the Walmarts and other stuff, and they're going to still see that merchandise. But the diehards on day one for Wicked, the diehards on day one for Minecraft or Mission Impossible at Thunderbolts are probably coming to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So why not put the merchandise in their hands from the beginning? Why not create items that are unique vessels to sell popcorn, to sell soda, to sell nachos or whatnot, and let the guests see that in person? So what it's done to us is we were not set up in a way to properly merchandise this stuff because it was new to us. All of this trend took off probably within the last 2 years. It was there, but it was never there in the fashion it was today. It was cups and tubs that were branded, toppers and stuff like that. But this has gone way beyond that. Now we're to the point of collectibles and different items of that nature. So we didn't have a form or fashion to properly display that because we weren't Target. We weren't Walmart. We didn't have shelving necessarily dedicated to that 5 years ago. So that transition has taken place.
It seems to me that the cinema change that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years is these lobbies are going to be a lot more like retail spaces, because it's not really a walk-through space as it used to be, maybe in the 1990s, right? It's a place where you can maybe grab and go concession snacks, where you can go and buy a t-shirt of the film you just saw, where you can order a full meal. We're talking about a significant evolution in how we imagine the concept of a physical cinema that's happened over the last decade.
You are 100% correct. I think we are constantly looking at different ways to monetize the consumer who is coming in and elevate their experience to be one that is memorable in every way, shape, or form, right? Kind of that more than a movie concept of, I'm going to do this. I'm a fan. I'm here. I like the brand, whether it's the movie brand, what we do or whatnot. I think that is totally pertinent, and we've seen it, but you see it in other venues. I think of Topgolf as one. You walk into Topgolf today and, you get into their lobby and they have a whole merchandising area of Topgolf merchandise, just general golf type merchandise. They have a large bar, they have a full food and beverage. Their entertainment is the golfing side of it and the gamification of that. For us, it's the cinema basis, it's the movies that bring it in, but we're all doing the same type of thing from a consumerism basis, out of home entertainment, trying to capture those dollars and elevate that guest experience to become memorable so that they represent the branding when they go out and about and they leave and they display this, they put it on social media, they promote who that is as part of their personal identity. That's changed a lot, right, in the last 10 years. People are selling their own brand. Mm-hmm. As they go out onto social media and they go out into the world. And part of that might be what entertains them and all the facets of that entertainment.
Yeah, as we close up this conversation, this is maybe an anecdotal observation that I have, and I just want to put it out there to you and the data that you guys see over at the NAC EF&B. I don't think I've been to a new cinema build without a dedicated bar in the last 5-6 years. Is it a rarity now to go into a new cinema that doesn't have its own bar space?
Well, I would say it differently. I would say I couldn't imagine building a theater that didn't offer alcohol.
Okay.
Now, what is the right fashion to sell that alcohol? Is it a dedicated bar? Is it a dedicated area at the end of the concession stand that kind of serves as a walk-up bar? Is it just, some form of canned or draft beverages? But yes, I would agree with you. I couldn't imagine us building a theater or anyone building a theater that didn't have a liquor license.
That's really interesting. And you went from alcohol not really having a footprint, in the year 2005 to now in 2025, you're the president of the trade association representing this side of the industry. And that's the difference we've seen in these last 20 years.
It's necessitated. I think many of us have figured out once we understand how to deal with the regulations around alcohol, the management, the safety, the sensitivity. Those are the key things, right? Municipality, consumer perception, all of these things that you come to realize you're talking about something that stadiums, and that's the benefit of EF&B is we have a stadium component, we have other venue operator components. They've been doing for years. There's a reason why they've been doing it. There's good money to be made in it. offering food as a supplement, there's good money in that. Now, the difference between alcohol and food, and why I say I wouldn't do anything without alcohol, is the margin on alcohol is much akin to the margin on soda and popcorn, which for our operators, our partners, they look at it and say, okay, I get this. This makes sense because this can command a price point. It can command a profit, number on a unit basis. Your per unit profit is fantastic on it. And the cost of selling it is low, and the labor component is not equivalent to like food service. When you get into full food service, the margins are not as great on food. Listen, you can sell a lot of food and make a lot of money, and we encourage that, but it's not the same as alcohol. You have to have a different skilled person to prepare the stuff. There's much more waste. There's very little waste. The beauty of hard liquor is it never goes bad.
What you're telling me is a headline in itself. We go from the holy trinity of cinema concessions, of soda, candy, popcorn, to adding a fourth member here, which is alcohol sales.
100%.
That is how important it is today.
100%. I would tell you it is a fourth leg on that, right? You went from a tripod to a full four-legged stool at this point, in my opinion, yes.
Well, Rob, thank you very much for your time. That is Rob Novak, SVP of Food and Beverage over at Marcus Theaters and President of the NAC/EF&B Trade Association.
Thank you, Daniel.
And a huge thank you to today's guests, Alex DelVecchio from the Rutgers Cinema and Rob Novak from Marcus Theaters. And a big thank you, of course, to my colleague, Chad Kennerk, for joining me here. My name is Daniel Loria, and we will be back with another daily episode of CinemaCon 2025 from the Boxoffice podcast tomorrow. So don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you again in a little bit.